Welcome to the F1Stop show. I'm your host Sam Oni, and with me tonight is Wes Spearman, as always. And this is episode 6. Where's how are we this evening?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Slightly disappointed by by the quality of the last two races, or I suppose the entertainment factor of the last two races, Baku and Miami. But yeah, besides that, all pretty good otherwise. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Um, you know, as you said, the last two races, Baku and Miami, wasn't quite entertaining. I was just sitting there and, excuse me, just sitting there and listening to it on the radio, and it wasn't very, didn't really enjoy it almost. Did you know? I saw this on social media that in Miami, when the drivers were being announced on the grid by a musician, apparently it took 7 minutes to get all the drivers out onto the grid, and it didn't
Yeah,
go so well with
I
everyone.
somehow I somehow blocked that from my mind. Yeah, I haven't actually seen it, but from what I gather, it was I think it was LL Cool J. I
Yeah,
think sort of doing the driver introductions, and from what I can gather, it was similar to when they did, I guess, something similar at Kota a few years ago when it was Hamilton versus Vettel for the title. Um, yeah, I don't mind sort of Formula One trying to appeal to an American fan base, but yeah, from a European standpoint, anyway, from a UK standpoint, for me, um, yeah, bit cringe, not quite for me, to be honest. I don't want some sort of exuberance and exaggerate over the top stuff, but yeah, I think from the look of the drivers as well, I don't think many of them enjoyed
enjoyed
it
it.
too much. I'd love to have seen Kimi Räikkönen, see what he did of it if he was still racing.
um, yeah, I because I read on it, and some drivers said that you know, I think I think Alonso was one of the drivers to say that we can't have it in like every single race. If you get what I mean, we can't have it in every single race. That it was just, we're just there to drive. We're just there to race and move on to the next. That this is just taking up too much time, and I think Perez echoed the same thing. So I was enjoyed it. Hamilton said it was cool. Yeah, he said it was cool. Anyway,
Yeah,
let's
not for
get
me.
to it. So before we jump to Miami, let's we ran to Baku, and honestly, I don't remember much from Baku.
I don't either, to be honest. Um, Going into typing up the race note or the notes for the podcast, I genuinely couldn't remember the race before Miami. I was like, what was it? It wasn't Monaco. Monaco's in a few weeks. It wasn't Imola. Oh yeah, it was Baku. Yeah, nothing really of note happened in Baku. The most exciting thing about this year's Baku Grand Prix was actually not in the Grand Prix. I think it was in one of the practice sessions where I think it was Yuki Tsunoda hit one of the walls and then his right rear, I think. Because it was down the hill in the final sector. He just sort of obviously him in the car at the bottom of the hill, and then the wheel just sort of slowly catching up to him, rolling down the hill, which was quite funny. Yeah, other than that, there was nothing really of note that happened in Baku. Leclerc pole. I can't remember if you predicted that or not. I think you did. Um, Perez went again, king of the streets, loves the street
Yeah,
tractors. To Sergio
he
Perez,
he thought he
win
thought that was
number 4, 5 in Red Bull. I can't quite remember now. Um, but yeah, there wasn't really that much of. I mean, going on my race notes from the highlights on F1, it goes lap 1, lap 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. When De Vries went off, lap 12, couple pit stops, safety car, Hamilton overtake on lap 20, and then it goes straight to lap 51. So for half the race, nothing really happened, which yeah goes to show. Although I mean, yeah, we didn't really miss much.
well. And then from Baku, then came Miami, which well, let's jump into it then. So as we saw the grid, or we heard the grid being introduced by LL Cool J, Max Verstappen started ninth on the grid. After that sprint, no, after that qualifying session, and you're probably thinking, you know what? If you're Max Verstappen, you're like, podium has got to be a target, like minimum P2. But Supermax doing Supermax things, he says to himself, "No, P2 is not enough for me. I'm gonna go ahead and win the race." And might I say, the way he was just getting position after position after position, what was going through your mind when you were listening to that on the radio? Because I was just like, boy, you may as well just give him the podium, give him the trophy already.
Another insane drive for Max. I mean, to start P9 on, and this is on a street circuit as well. And street circuits not necessarily the easiest places to overtake. Obviously, they tend to be narrower than the normal tracks like Silverstones, your Spas, etc. Yeah, I mean, as you say, Supermax doing Supermax things. Yeah, it was a bit of an interesting qualifying session. Perez starting on pole, Alonso P2, love that. Magnussen P4, Gasly P5 in the Alpine, and then you had the two Ferraris, the two Mercedes, and obviously Verstappen as well, a bit further down the grid towards the midfield. Yeah, it's just the way he just overtook the cars. Really, I mean, when he overtook both Leclerc and Magnussen, I think on the start finish straight going into turn one. I think you had the assist of DRS, but just the speed of that Red Bull compared to all the other cars on the grid is just insane. And I mean, it'd be interesting to see if Red Bull did overspend this year. I don't know if they did. Yeah, hats off to them for designing an incredible car for the second year running. And yeah, they're just so far ahead of everywhere else. Because I mean, if you look at the Mercedes, you had Russell qualifying P6, Hamilton qualifying P13, for crying out loud. How often have we seen Hamilton that far down the grid? Yes, he made it back up to P6, but Verstappen, again, a 45 lap stint on hard tyres, and he was right on the back of Perez for a lot of that as well. And I think overtook him like 2 laps into his stint on the mediums at the end. Incredible drive from Max Verstappen, and he's on his way to a third world title, I suppose. I know it's early doors, but yeah, with drives like that, there's no stopping him.
Indeed, like you said, there's no stopping him, and well, it just goes to show how brilliant that RB19 is. Because I heard online that Christian Horner was, saying, "Where is everyone? Where's our Ferrari? Where's our Mercedes? We're so ahead of everybody," and like, you know, no one seems to be, sorry, no one seems to be getting within touching distance of the two Red Bulls, and it looks it looks like it's going to be another Max Verstappen season. Like, I wouldn't be okay. So he's on 3 wins now. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets at least 10 double figures. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets double figures this season.
At least,
Because
yeah. I think, what was there, 22, 23 races this
yeah,
season? So, yeah, 23 races. So, yeah, I'd be surprised if he doesn't get into double figures. And if he doesn't, then if he doesn't get into double figures, then we're probably looking at a Perez world champion. Let's be honest. That's Alonso. I mean, I'd love to see Alonso get one. He's been so impressive this season for Aston Martin. 4 podiums and a P4 as well in Baku is just a sensational effort. But yeah, I'd be surprised if Verstappen doesn't get into double figures. And yeah, looking at his pace in the first 6 rounds, 7 rounds of the season, yeah, it's just incredible how quick he and Perez are in the Red Bulls. Because they're just looking back to the Miami as a result, you got obviously Verstappen first, Perez 5.4 seconds behind, which is an age already. He's so far ahead of his teammate. Then you have to go back another 21 seconds to Alonso in third. Then back another 7 seconds to Russell in the Mercedes. They are so far ahead of everyone else. Red Bull is. Yeah, as said a few minutes ago, there's just no stopping that team.
So the gap from Verstappen, as you mentioned, to about Russell's what, 35, 40 seconds roughly?
About that, yeah.
Wow. It just shows how far ahead these Red Bulls are. Um, During the race, I think there were one or two things that stood out to me. Um, Midfield and the lower cars going toe to toe with the big, almost like the big three cars. So you've got Kevin Magnussen in a Haas, which is relatively slow, probably second or slowest car of the grid, against Ferrari in Charles Leclerc. You could roughly say what, third, fourth fastest, and yet we're seeing Magnussen pull off some couple overtakes. He's just taking it to Leclerc, and that really excited me because you wouldn't see that normally.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that was the most exciting thing about that Miami Grand Prix is just those two go wheel to wheel for not quite the whole race, but a good 2/3 of it. Um, I think the funniest thing was just you had Leclerc overtake Magnussen, and then a turn or two later, Magnussen would get the position back. There was one point I'm just trying to find in lap 37. You had Leclerc overtake Magnussen for P11, and battling for P11 in a Ferrari. Bloody hell. Yeah, I think into the last corner or second to last corner, and then Magnussen's comes back at Leclerc with DRS down the start finish straight and overtakes him or reclaims the position into turn one. Then I think the next move that Leclerc made on him a lap later, he actually waited until turn one to make the move, and he eventually made it stick for P9. Um, yeah, just the way those two battled for a good half, 2/3 of the race is it added something to an otherwise pretty dull Miami Grand Prix. And I mean, fair play to Haas. I mean, yes, Magnussen did start fourth. There were bit of a shake-up of the grid. Yeah, Ferrari, they need to pull their fingers out. They shouldn't be battling a Haas, P11 and P7. They should be battling Perez, Verstappen for race wins and podiums, Alonso for podiums as well. Same for Mercedes as well to some extent. They had arguably a slightly poor weekend in Miami. Hamilton qualifying P13. Yes, he made it back up to P6. Russell up to P4. Yeah, they'll be disappointed that they're not as close to the Red Bulls as they'd like. They want to be right on their tails, whereas they're 40 seconds down the road, almost 2/3 of a lap, but off the pace over a whole Grand Prix. But yeah, I mean, it was a great battle between Leclerc and Magnussen, and if we get a few more of those battles going on rather than just one in a race, then yeah, there'll be more entertaining Grand Prix to watch.
Sticking with the Mercedes, do you think now is the time for Toto to, you know, think about asking his engineers to whip up the upgrades for Hamilton and Russell's cars, because we're entering what, Imola will be race number 6, I believe.
Yeah, Imola's around 6 in a couple of weeks or next week.
So, with these upgrades, and Mercedes need to try and get as close to Red Bull as they can. Do you think that now's the time to you know change it up?
It's tricky to say because I mean, yeah, all the teams will be working hard on upgrades for the season to see how they can make their cars quicker. It's just the fact that Red Bull are so far ahead of the pack already, and obviously Red Bull themselves will be developing their own upgrades. It's just a case of when I suppose the teams sort of not necessarily bow out of upgrading their cars and focus on developing next year's, because they'll be doing that already to some extent. But yeah, you just need to find ways of they're just those marginal gains of those hundredths of a second, those thousandths of a second, because obviously over the course of a 50, 60, 70 lap Grand Prix, they all add up quite substantially. But again, all the teams will be doing that. Red Bull will be doing that, and they just need to find ways of improving their car, upgrading it as best they can. And it's proven pretty difficult at the moment to catch up to Red Bull with or without the upgrades.
And well, we know that. Well, what have you enjoyed the most about Miami? What could be improved about the circuit as a whole? And what do we hope for next season in Miami in particular?
Just for a more exciting race, I think. I think the two races we've had in Miami haven't been great. I can't really remember much about last year's at all, if anything, really. This year, the standout was that battle between Leclerc and Magnussen. But other than that, again, pretty non-event, I suppose. It just be good to see, some more overtaking, some more battles, not just between two cars, but up and down the grid. And I probably want that for every Grand Prix, I suppose. Just some more excitement, really. And Miami so far hasn't really impressed in its short career in F1. Just like to see more excitement, more battles, more overtaking, and not all necessarily by by one driver in Max Verstappen.
It might still be early days. I know we're only like 5 races in, but excluding Max Verstappen, has anyone impressed you this season? If so, why? Who and why?
I think one perhaps sort of standout would be, I mean, obviously Alonso is massively impressed. I
Yeah.
don't think many people would expect him to be third in the championship, leading Lewis Hamilton by 19 points or whatever it is. Stroll is doing okay as well. Hulkenberg with 6 points in the Haas, doing pretty well as well. But Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri has been pretty solid, I think. I don't think AlphaTauri got as good a car as they did last year. But to claim they got 2 P10s, 3 P11, so there or thereabouts in the points. He's done all right in what is arguably the 9th, 10th slowest car on the grid. Unfortunately for Nick de Vries's team, it hasn't quite worked out for him. He's still yet to get off the mark this season, I think. Are people putting a bit too much pressure on De Vries after his exceptional outing for last year in the Williams at Monza, where he got, I think, P9 his first F1 race? Are people putting a bit too much pressure on him because he is still only a rookie and driving for a brand new team? Maybe, but it hasn't quite worked out for De Vries. But Tsunoda, hats off to him after sort of people saying, he's a bit hot-headed. He's still very young, bit not necessarily immature, but inexperienced. I think he's done pretty well so far in these first 5 races. Yes, it's only 2 points, but given AlphaTauri's car isn't as good as last year, I think it's still a pretty solid effort from Tsunoda.
I'd have to agree with you there. Fernando Alonso, who you've mentioned, I mean, top 4 in every race he's raced in he's competed in so far, and I'd love for him to win a race. I think it will cement. I think it will cement the move from Alpine to Aston Martin, because that move to Aston Martin, that has to be one of the most best kept secrets, if you like. Because
it was unexpected, wasn't it?
Yeah. Because if you remember, last year, Sebastian Vettel, who had been racing for Aston Martin, had announced that he would be retiring at the end of the 22 season. And then, I don't know, Aston Martin just said, okay, we need someone to replace Sebastian Vettel. Let's talk with Fernando Alonso behind closed doors. And here we are. he's racing for the British team, and it looks to have paid off.
Yeah, I'd say it's more than paid off already. And yes, Aston Martin have got a better car than last year, but 5 consecutive top four um, for Alonso. He's got just looking at his things now. He's got 4 podiums, 3 back to back to start the season, a 4th in Baku, and then back on the podium again in Miami. 3rd in the drivers' championship. I think Aston Martin is 2nd in the constructors. They lead Mercedes by 6 points in the constructors. Not necessarily all down to Alonso, but mostly down to Alonso. And whether that sort of breath of fresh air, if you like, a new team, sort of completely different to where he's raced before. I think he started off at Minardi, and went to, I think there was a team between Minardi and Renault. Spent a lot of his time at the Renault team and sort of Team Enstone, if you like, Renault/Alpine. Obviously, his stint with Ferrari in the middle. McLaren, which didn't go well at all. I can't remember where he went after the McLaren stint now. Anyway,
Alpine.
Was it Alpine straight after McLaren? I feel like there was a team in between McLaren and Alpine. I can't remember now. People will be shouting out what it is, but obviously Alpine last year and the year before, and now Aston Martin, and it's paid dividends for someone who has had typically poor career moves. Maybe from a 2-time world champion in the Renault to the fallout between him and Hamilton and Spygate in the 2007 McLaren, back to Renault where there was Crashgate in 2008, to Ferrari just as they were on a downward curve, to McLaren just before they had the infamous GP2 engine and the whole troubles with Honda, to it must have been Alpine, it must have been Renault. I genuinely can't remember. Or did he have a break? A few years out of F1?
Yeah.
I think he did.
I think so. He did.
Come to think of it. Yeah. And then we returned with Alpine and Aston Martin, as we say. I mean, at the start, he's had this. I mean, he'll want to continue that throughout the season. And it's a case of teams like Mercedes and Ferrari sort of catch up and challenge him for those podium places. Remains to be seen. But so far, Fernando Alonso, hats off to you.
Indeed. And we wait for the day that he wins a race this season, because I firmly believe he'll win at least one race. As where it will be, I don't know, but he will be on the top step this year. But yeah, how would you rate the race, Miami, out of 10?
I'm trying to remember what I've given the others. I think I've mostly given them sort of 6s and 7s because they've been mostly okay. They've been decent races to watch, but in Baku I'll probably give a 2. To be honest, it was pretty dull. Miami, maybe a 4. I'll give it a 4. I think 4 is a bit generous, but the battle between Leclerc and Magnussen was pretty good, and obviously Verstappen flying through the grid, 45 lap stint on hard tyres, is incredibly impressive. I don't think I can give it a 3. I think that'll be too harsh, but I think a 4 sits about right.
I think I agree with you on that as well. There wasn't really much that happened in the race, other than Magnussen having his battle with Leclerc, and as you said, Verstappen just soaring through the grid all the way up to the top step to pick up his 3rd win of the season. But yeah, 4 out of 10 for Miami. Hopefully the next race will bring more joy to us F1 fans and, get us all excited again. So,
Yeah, we've got. Sorry. Yeah, we've got Imola coming up. Not this weekend, but next weekend. Love Imola. I think it's a fantastic track. Hasn't shown that much excitement since it came on the grid in 2020. Yeah, still, other than that, I think it is a fantastic track. And yeah, hopefully we get some good racing there again this year.
We look forward to that weekend, the 19th of May. So this has been another episode of F1Stop Show. We hope you've enjoyed it. Max Verstappen was on the top step yet again in doing Max Verstappen things. Who knows? Maybe the third World Championship is already being polished up, and I'm speaking too soon. I'm speaking too soon. There's probably like 15 races to go, including Las Vegas. But hey, we'll get there when we get there. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. I've been your host, Sam Oni, and it's a goodbye from me. Bye bye. And it's a goodbye from Wes.
Bye bye.
And we will see you next time for the Emilia Romagna GP in Italy.